good, guys? Welcome back to the first take. Question for you guys. If you have been a fan of Netflix's little portion of the Marvel universe that they've been doing with the Daredevil show and Jessica Jones, and now we've got season 2 of Daredevil dropping, you're obviously aware of the Iron Fist show, which is coming after Luke Cage's show. But I have to confess, as someone who did grow up reading comic books, Iron Fist was one of the ones, kind of like with the Doctor Strange, that's coming out later in this year. It's one of those characters that I never really got into, so I'm not completely fully aware of his story. I was aware of Jessica Jones, not deeply, but generally I was pretty aware of her before, watching the show. I was really aware with Daredevil. I read Daredevil as a kid, so, I knew that story back to front, and Punisher, I know all that shit, because I grew up with it. But Iron Fist, not so much familiar. So, I figured, I did this before with Doctor Strange. I figured, let's ask the Comicstorian. It's a YouTube channel that kind of crammed together origins and isolated stories from the comic books, and they just kind of present it in a visual form that we can kind of quickly digest. And they're pretty cool. So they did one for the origins of Iron Fist. So I figured, I know nothing about this. It's still got another year at least before we see the show. So I want to jump into this. Be aware though, there could be spoilers for the show ahead. Possibly. Maybe. I'm real curious about it, guys. Let's hear it.
Welcome back to Origins, where we go deeper into your favorite comic book superhero and villains and how they got to where they are now. So today we're going to be continuing our examination of the characters that will be featured in Netflix's Marvel television shows. So prepare yourself for the origin of Daniel Rand, also known as Iron Fist, the living weapon. We start our story with Wendell Rand, who once lived in the mystical city of Kunlun, which exists in another dimension separate from our reality. Wendell was the eldest son, and therefore the appropriate heir to the city of Kunlun. But sadly, Wendell was driven from the mystical city by his ambitious brother who desired to rule it himself. Wendell eventually arrived in the United States, where he became a successful businessman, and he married a woman named Heather, and she bore him the child named Daniel, who was then raised in New York City. However, Wendell wished to return to Kunlun, which would only appear on Earth every 10 years. So it was due to that he ventured to Tibet in search of the interdimensional nexus that would lead him back to Kunlun. He journeyed there with his wife and his 9-year-old son, and his business partner, Harold McKean. Of course, the journey would not be easy, and it was wrought with much peril. Attempting to venture into a snowy mountain pass, Daniel ended up toppling off of the mountain cliff, and it dragged both him and his parents down. While Daniel and his mother Heather were safe on a ledge, his father was dangling off the side of the cliff. His business partner Harold had a chance to help him, but he believed that this journey to be a fool's errand and saw this as an opportunity to take over Wendell's portion of their business. Instead of helping him, he pushed Wendell off the edge of the cliff, where he plunged to an icy death. Harold then offered to help Heather and Daniel, but knowing what he had done, they then ran off into the treacherous mountains alone to get away from the murderous businessman. What happened next continues the tragedy that makes up Daniel Rand's origin, as they spotted a suspension bridge that presumably would lead them to safety. It was then that a pack of ravenous wolves attacked the pair. Heather, being protected of her son Daniel, sacrificed her life to keep the wolves from harming her son. And he then ran across the bridge, leaving his mother there to die to the wolves. With his father and his mother dead, Daniel then was rescued by scouts from Kunlun, and they took him back to the mystical city to present him to the new ruler of the city, UT. While seeing that Daniel was full of rage and wanted vengeance upon the treacherous Harold, UT apprentices Daniel to Lei Kung, the thunderer in the ways of martial arts. Under the cruel tutelage of Lei Kung, young Daniel proved himself to be a prodigy of many martial arts, and he learned to master his chi. By the age of 16, he'd already shown incredible prowess in defeating foes that were much more accomplished than him. And with his rage burning brightly inside of him, he aspired to turn his fists into hardened weapons by plunging his hands into braziers of hot sand, gravel, and rock. His greatest test would eventually come at the age of 19, though, when he aspired to gain the title of the Iron Fist. This proved to be no easy task, because he would have to defeat an ancient, gigantic, fire-breathing serpent named Shao Lu the Undying. Daniel then engaged Shao Lu in an epic battle where he grappled with the serpent's body. But Shao Lu had a scar on his chest that looked similar to a dragon, and as Daniel was grappling with him, that scar emblazoned itself upon young Daniel's chest. With that, he defeated the serpent, but there was a final task of reaching into the mystical brazier that contained the molten heart of Shao Lu. Just like he did in training, Daniel fearlessly plunged his hands into the heart, granting him mystically superpowered fists. He had finally become the Iron Fist. This entire experience imbued Daniel with superhuman abilities that is usually depicted with glowing energy coming from his hands. With his transformation complete, he could now journey away from Kunlun, which had reappeared on Earth after 10 years of him training, so he could eventually gain vengeance on the man who had killed his father and forced his mother to sacrifice herself. 10 years from the day that he arrived in Kunlun, he departed finally, and he journeyed back to New York to find Harold McKean and get the vengeance that he had been training for. However, McKean did not escape Tibet unscathed, as he had suffered bitter frostbite that took his legs from him, making him a weak invalid. Though he did successfully take over Wendell Rand's part of the business, becoming insanely wealthy. Daniel Rand finally confronted him, garbed as the mighty Iron Fist. But his vengeance would be bittersweet, because with McKean being crippled, he accepts his fate at the hands of Daniel. But Iron Fist could not take his life, and instead he takes pity on him when suddenly a mysterious ninja shows up and kills McKean. While McKean's daughter blames Iron Fist, he does eventually clear his own name, and then he inherits the wealth of his family's half of the Rand McKean Corporation, making him a very wealthy man. It is here that Daniel Rand assumes his role as a superhero in New York City as the immortal Iron Fist. While it may seem obvious what Iron Fist's powers are, let us briefly discuss what he's truly capable of. At the core of his abilities is his capability to augment and manipulate his chi. This not only gives him far-reaching control over his body, but it also grants him an expansive mental control. The mantle of Iron Fist gives him the ability to perform superhuman punches that allows him to shatter wood and brick, rip through steel, and ultimately punch even the most hardy of foes. For example, he's able to actually knock Colossus unconscious. Because of the supernatural origins of his abilities, he does not harm his own hands while trying to accomplish these feats of strength, and in fact it allows him to do so continually. Iron Fist can also absorb, manipulate, and generate energy due to this chi control. This can allow him to absorb energy blasts and refocus them into a ranged energy blast, much like Ken and Ryu from Street Fighter. His energy control also gives him the ability to heal himself from substantial damage, and at times it allows him to heal other people. Along with these magnificent abilities, he displays enhanced senses, enhanced speed, heightened awareness, and an enhanced durability. To say the least, Iron Fist is a superhuman phenomenon not to be taken lightly. Now I hope you guys all enjoyed this origin of Daniel Rand, the Iron Fist, and in the future you can expect more videos exploring Iron Fist's relationship with Luke Cage, as they're a superhero duo known as the Heroes for Hire. You can also expect a video talking about the relationship between Daredevil and Iron Fist, because they have very similar origins and have worked together quite often. Make sure you subscribe to Comicstorian and follow us on Twitter so we can
seeing those two together on screen. I'm real curious to see how they adapt that costume, because at first glance it's actually kind of similar to the sort of makeshift costume that Daredevil was wearing for most of season 1 on the Netflix show. You know, the black one where it was just kind of like pulled over. It's actually kind of similar to that, but with color and with eye holes. The one which near the end at least. The other one where it's all like opened up with the chest, yeah, they can't go with that one. Please don't go with that one. But I want to see how they're going to interpret that in the show, especially that whole wrestling, fighting against that serpent demon in order to, you know, to be the final test before dipping your hands. That's a staple of Kung Fu movies, man, where you have to kind of dip your hand, harden it in like hot coals and burning embers and hot sand. All the old school Kung Fu movies always had that, to get the Iron Fist style, the Iron Palm, Buddhist fist. So, who's the actor? It was Finn, was it Jones? The guy from Game of Thrones? Interesting. You know, some people weren't happy that they didn't reinterpret or recast it as a, you know, an Asian American. The original character is white, so I guess, you know, you're staying true to the comic book. It'd be interesting to see if they do kind of tweak that origin a little bit though, to make it more believable, because the culture is so very much of an Oriental, you know, Chinese origin. To make it more believable that he and his ancestors come from that world, maybe they kind of find a different way to explain it, like they're something slightly different, or I'm actually really curious to see how they interpret it. And that may have been one of the reasons why they were taking so long to get this whole Iron Fist show up and running, because it was such a difficult thing they had to crack, because they have said it's going to have this mystical element in the show, which is interesting there, and it could actually kind of cross over with Doctor Strange. Apparently because there's a lot of like dimensional crossing and all this shit, so that could be something to look out for. Maybe even they got the guy hired now in time to make some sort of tiny appearance or mention in the Doctor Strange movie, which I think they're still finishing up production of. So yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one. This actually does make me way more interested to see what this character has to offer on the big screen, or the little the little big screen, the Netflix screen, should I say? But yeah, I'm real curious. What about you guys? Are you familiar with Iron Fist, or not so much? Kind of like me, and you're still pretty curious of how they're really gonna bring this into, you know, a tangible world, that sort of dark, gritty world that they've already established with, you know, Jessica Jones and Daredevil. I'm real curious now, real curious. But we saw little teasers of it in the first season of Daredevil, so I'm really looking forward to see if there's even any more, like with the hand, whether any of that sort of stuff kind of connects over with the Iron Fist. I don't see why not. Let me know, guys. Write comments down below. You like the video, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up. I'm a reason this has been my reaction to Comicstorian's Iron Fist Origins. Me like it.